Hi, I'm Lorie Coates, Behavior Analyst for Davis School District, Special Ed Department BATE team.
I'm Joceline Ruiz, BCBA on the BATE team.
And I'm Krystal Martin, BCBA, also on the BATE team.
And we're back with another podcast of the BATE Debate, where our team of behavior analysts talk about behavior in schools and share strategies and stories about responding to situations that may come up when working with students. Today, we are going to be talking about and debunking common ABA myths.
Yes.
So let's start with our first one. ABA is only used for students with autism.
That one, I see that ABA is actually intended to be used to support individuals of all backgrounds and abilities. ABA principles such as reinforcement or shaping apply to all behavior, and it may be used in settings such as a general education classroom, staff training, sports, or mental health. What about the myth that ABA teaching is robotic?
That's been a myth for a long time, that we talk about how, you hear people talk about how we just train students to just respond to everything. But what really comes up is we actually work with clients or students in their natural environment. We really want them to be more functional in their natural environment. That's why we love working in schools, because students spend a great deal of their time and their day in schools. We always focus on skills that are socially valid. We talked about social significance in our last podcast. Those socially valid behaviors that we focus on, they need to be meaningful, acceptable, and relevant to the student and in their environment. We also, as we talked about last time, I know I keep going back to last time, but we talked about that ABA has a focus on relationships. In fact, we talk about initially pairing, which we'll discuss a little bit later, where it's a key for meaningful growth. If you don't have a relationship, you can't make that meaningful growth. So ABA is definitely not robotic. But I have heard some people say ABA is harmful. What are your thoughts on that, Joss?
Well, we can't deny that ABA's past does have some things that we are not very proud of
Yes.
in our current age, but nowadays we have ethical guidelines, trauma-informed ABA, and assent-based practices that are now the standard. So we really do try to be ethical and really can't ignore the past. So just trying to learn from the past and see how we can improve our practices to be effective for all the individuals that we support. ABA is about understanding why behavior happens and teaching meaningful, socially valid skills, not manipulating with bribes or threats, which we'll also talk about a little bit about here in a couple minutes. And then ABA is also, we see behavior as a window into what a person needs or values. It helps us understand and support them through observable patterns. So let's talk about the myth that ABA equals bribery, or that reinforcement takes too much time.
Yeah. So I think if someone is really planning their reinforcement, it should be systematic with the intention to increase desired behaviors. Whereas bribery is going to be reactive, it happens in the moment, and it may end up reinforcing a problem behavior, or it may temporarily stop problem behaviors, but there's no teaching component to teach an alternative or a more desired behavior. Reinforcement shouldn't just be about giving out candy or stickers. It can be praise or other social reinforcements, and it can be fun activities, natural consequences. And when we invest in reinforcement earlier, that saves time later by reducing our disruptions and fostering cooperation. Sometimes we hear that staff are concerned of students becoming dependent on rewards.
Oh, yeah.
But if we properly fade reinforcement, that can build independence, and the students can contact naturally occurring reinforcement.
which is like the best, right? That
Yeah, those
contacting
are-
what's really going to happen in their world.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And that will always be available to them because it's around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lorie, does ABA ignore building positive relationships?
No, right? We've talked about this a lot, and I think we can't say it enough, is that relationships are a critical part of any ABA program. We often discuss when we first start working with a student or a client in a private setting, we often discuss pairing goals. And pairing means that we're helping the RBT become connected to and have a relationship with the client or with the student. So critical because having that relationship helps us to manage effective reinforcement. You can't have effective reinforcement if there's not a relationship. Kids will not respond to reinforcement if there's not a relationship with the person who's providing it. So ABA, when practiced ethically, it's also grounded in compassion, choice, and dignity. Critical components, and it's about empowering people. So definitely not ignoring relationships. So one thing I know that I've heard several times, Joss, is ABA only uses punishment. What do you know about that?
Well, punishment is an ABA component, but we would never use punishment alone. We would pair it with reinforcement, and reinforcement is always our first go-to. But again, historically, some programs did rely on aversive techniques in the past, and these stories still circulate. But today, those ethical practices and guidelines that we have emphasize reinforcement-based strategies, teaching replacement behaviors, and avoiding harmful methods. Punishment, just to kind of let you all know what it is in ABA, punishment is, it will decrease behavior. So reinforcement increases behavior, punishment decreases behavior, but it doesn't teach replacement skills, where reinforcement does. What about ignoring the myth that ignoring the challenging behavior is the best way to get it to stop?
Yeah, I think I see a lot of people may say, oh, let's just ignore it and it'll go away. That's only going to work maybe if that the function of that behavior is seeking attention. But ignoring should also, as you said with punishment, be paired with reinforcing a better alternative behavior that the student can engage in. If the function isn't about seeking attention, ignoring other behaviors, if the function is seeking escape, or if they're seeking access to items or sensory, it may actually make the behavior worse, and it won't decrease it.
I actually had that experience just recently working with a private client where we actually tried some pulling away attention, and attention wasn't the function. We found out very quickly because the client's behavior actually rose to almost a dangerous level, and so it just increased behavior instead of making anything different. So we quickly changed our approach, which is what ABA does, right? Once you realize that something's not effective, you quickly change your approach for that student.
Yeah.
Really important.
And what about if we see that a behavior has stopped, does that really tell us that the intervention has worked?
I think some people might think, right, that, oh, the behavior stops, so this intervention must be amazing, it must be magic. But behavior change is only meaningful if it lasts, occurs across settings, and it's socially valid. Again, we're coming up with that socially valid term, meaning that it improves the quality of life for that client and those involved with the client. A change that isn't valued by the individual or stakeholders is just compliance. It's not meaningful, and it isn't real success. We can get a behavior to stop quickly, and actually in behavioral science, we have some very good strategies for that, and with the right intervention, but we need to look for behavioral skills that improve, again, quality of life, and that's where we should be. Well, thank you again for tuning in to this episode of the BAIT Debate. We're excited to have this opportunity to share behavioral strategies. It was fun today to talk about the myths of ABA, because they're definitely floating out there, and when people hear ABA, they go, oh no, we got to step away from that. But we have many more topics that we are going to talk about throughout the school year to keep you and your educator friends reeled in. Remember, we're on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and Audible. You can reach out and find us in any of these platforms, like and share, and we'll catch you next time.